Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Erin Molan Show. Great to have your company, as always. I hope you've had okay weekends. I know there's a lot going on in the world, not all of it overly positive. This show, though, is jam-packed. And whilst the content is not particularly positive because we're covering war, I promise it will make you feel good. It will make you feel informed. It will make you feel emboldened. It will encourage you that you are on the right side of history. What's coming up? Rabbi Wolicki, the man they called Charlie Kirk's rabbi. He exposes who has been leaking to Candace Owens this entire time. Plus, ballistic missiles. Can you believe the Islamic regime have lied about how far they can go? Yes, I can. But it's been a real wake-up call for those who thought, oh, gee, no, they're honest, really good people, just telling the truth. No, they ain't. So let's get stuck in. Plenty to get through before we get to our interview. And let's start on that, this Islamic regime and this revelation regarding how far these missiles can travel. For those who thought that this regime was Pollyanna-like, truth tellers, innocent victims of these war-mongering Americans and Israelis, well, they were given a rude shock over the weekend when a missile was launched at a target 4,000 kilometres away. Twice the distance this satanic regime have said publicly that they were capable of. Have a look.
Mr. Arachi, if I may, we heard from the president first in his State of the Union address that took place on Tuesday and again this morning in recorded remarks that I'm sure you've heard. The president said, among other things, that Iran has been building missiles that, in his words, could soon reach the American homeland. So as it relates to Iran's ballistic missile capabilities, does Iran now have the capability to reach the U.S. homeland? How far removed is it from that capability?
No, we don't have that capability. We have intentionally kept the range of our missiles below 2,000 kilometers. So we don't have that capability, and we don't want to do that because we don't have any hostility against, the United States people or Europeans or whatsoever. We have built that capability in order to defend ourselves against our enemies.
So all of a sudden, we see Europe is just a little bit less adversarial regarding providing assistance to this war effort, even though, as Trump said a week or so ago, it's too late, we don't need you anymore. The UK realising they are on the brink of being reached. This should change everything. Everything. Not for those of us who already understood the threat, because we've got eyes, ears, we can read, we've got a brain, we can comprehend. We haven't sold our souls to the devil. But for those who are in denial or who are being pulled by other factors that don't serve the best interests of their nation, this should change everything. The legitimacy of the threat now has been proven. And the point I would make is if this regime is willing to lie about how far ballistic missiles can go, why would they not also be lying about their intention when it comes to nuclear weapons or how far along they actually are? We've seen Joe Kent do the tour circuit of clowns with all the, podcasters, the Tucker Carlsons, Megyn Kellys, Candace Owens, etc., and he's saying, oh no, the Supreme Leader had a fatwa.
I mean, the Iranians have had a religious ruling, a fatwa, against actually developing a nuclear weapon since 2004. That's been in place since 2004. That's available in the public sphere. But then also we had no intelligence to indicate that fatwa was being disobeyed or it was on the cusp of being lifted.
They were not wanting to make nuclear weapons. Well, sorry, A, why the hell on earth would you ever believe a thing that he says? B, he also said their missiles could not travel further than 2,000 kilometers.
Our long-range ballistic missile, which is 2,000 kilometers, and I mentioned that 2,000 kilometers. For now, they wanted to go up to 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers, but I didn't allow it. After all, it has its costs, and there's a reason for it. I prevented it. I said not more than 2,000 kilometers.
Not true. And also, when you're looking at the caliber of people that you want to put in this place of trust, terrorists who hang protesters, who shoot them dead in the street, who torture and rape women for showing a strand of hair are not renowned for being truth tellers. You don't need to be a nuclear physicist to realize that these satanic murderers, as well as slaughtering innocent people, lie. Lie. I don't know if you also saw Joe Kent in his interview with Megyn Kelly in particular, when he was being asked about leaking, and we know that the FBI is investigating these alleged leaks. His saying no and denying that was as weak as anything I have seen.
Someone in government and some online are speculating that, well, we know it was leaked to Candace Owens and she reported on it, and some are speculating that you were the leaker. So did you leak that document to Candace?
No.
Did you leak it all to the media?
No.
And have you watched as other government employees have leaked multiple documents and information with absolutely no threat of prosecution?
I have the same access to the media that you do, so I see it happening. I don't know specifics of anyone specifically leaking themselves, but yeah.
As weak as anything. And also, again, I mentioned it earlier, his attempt to say, oh no, that there was a fatwa, the Supreme Leader said no nuclear weapons. Come on. If that's what you are reliant upon, if that is the hill you're willing to die on, you need to find a new hill, a bigger hill, a stronger hill, a less demonic hill. It's ridiculous. The basis of who they are is to do anything that is required to dominate, to take over, to kill. So referencing that is just insane. It's insane. Now, I want to show you a reaction that I had yesterday to the ballistic missile hit that happened in Arad in Israel. If you haven't seen it, take a look. Right now in Israel, they're searching under rubble for children after the Islamic regime of Iran sent a ballistic missile directly towards a residential apartment complex. Can we acknowledge the following is true? All evidence-based. This regime kills tens of thousands of its own people. It's done that already this year, including hanging young men for protesting. Surprised they didn't shoot them point blank in the street. That's their normal modus operandi. They chant death to America, death to Israel, death to the West. They have the blood of Americans, Europeans, British, Australian, and many others on their hands. Their ballistic missile range is double what they said publicly it was. And all the evidence points towards nuclear capability imminently. So why do we demonize Israel? Why? When right now they are searching for their children under rubble. American citizens are not dying right now. British citizens are not dying. European citizens are not dying. Australian citizens are not dying. Israeli citizens knew the second this war broke out that it would be them who would pay with their lives. And not one that I have seen thus far has said, we're not willing to make that sacrifice, not just for our own people, for our own children, but for the rest of the world to have peace. Instead of demonizing them, we should be thanking them. Thanking them for being at the coalface, for running to bomb shelters every 2 seconds, for losing their lives, for the rest of us to have a future without this threat, without an evil Islamic jihadi terrorist organization with the capability to reach us all and to kill and to destroy and to annihilate. Thank you, Israelis. Thank you. You knew that you would be the hardest hit the second this broke out, but you have bravely absorbed that threat. Your willingness to do it is unbelievable. It is so courageous. And it is not just on behalf of yourselves, it is on behalf of all of us. So thank you. Now, we know that incidents can also occur everywhere around the world because we have been infiltrated. This ideology, this Islamic extremism that wants to destroy everything the West holds dear is already in our homes. It's in our cities. It's online. It's everywhere. What we've seen all over the Western world, these big gatherings of prayer, and Muslims themselves have come out and said, This is not what our religion is about. This is not what we are directed to do. This is not what happens in Muslim majority countries. And we've seen, particularly in the UK, this clamp down on your ability to even say that you are uncomfortable with it. Conservative minister in the UK coming out so staunchly and saying, no, not okay, not on my watch. And this campaign to cancel him, to have him sacked, led by the Prime Minister, because he dared to express what I suspect most people in the UK feel, which is, we are not okay with that. It doesn't feel right. It's not who we are. And again, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to worship whoever you like, absolutely. But what is occurring is not that. It is an attempt to dominate, an attempt to intimidate, an attempt to take over. Again, I tell you, I lived in Indonesia, the world's largest Islamic nation. As a child, on 2 different occasions, 2 periods during the 1990s. And I'll always remember Mum and Dad were adamant to us, we must respect the country we are going to, the culture, the religion. When we are in public anywhere, we must dress in a way that is respectful, that reflects what they believe. We cover our shoulders, we cover ourselves, we don't use a certain hand because that is considered dirty. With dogs, different things that we did to show respect to a Muslim nation, where the vast majority of people are Muslim. Not once would we have ever gone into the street and screamed about Catholicism or our religion or tried to push it onto them. Never. We were still allowed to have our religious holidays and to go to church. But we would never have created an environment or an occasion where any Muslim would have felt intimidated by us. No, it just wasn't. No. We had respect for their nation, their culture, their beliefs, their religion. We kept ours, but we did not dominate. And this is what is occurring here. It's the complete opposite. Have a listen to a couple of Muslim women who have gone on UK television off the back of these mass gathering moments. Have a listen to what they say.
Let me say this. I speak as someone who is a Muslim, practicing Muslim. I am 100% against politicizing Islam. And this public prayer, we've been for a long time, way before, for the last 16 years, calling for ban, because this is politicizing Islam and is actually against the teaching of Islam. I don't see any Muslim countries that people come into the streets praying. It is an individual act between you or the place of mosque. Even at the time of Prophet Muhammad existed, he either prayed at his home or in the mosque. Now, what we are witnessing, it is very worrying that we need to deal with, and it is the result of us being too soft, too appeasing, that we are witnessing this today, that we've not taken strong measures, because this is not about the religion of Islam. This is politicizing Islam, using it as a weapon, using it, imposing it to others. And this is actually against the teaching of it, because you are not allowed to impose your religion to others. And by publicly going into the street praying, that is not part of the teaching. So I am 100% supportive of the ban. And if Keir Starmer had the courage to actually ban this, I will 100% support him on that.
A huge kick-off that's happened here. It was Nick Timothy, the Conservative MP, said he found this an act of domination. Kemi Badenoch backed him up. Sir Keir Starmer demanded Nick Timothy was fired. And now Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, has waded in, basically comparing Kemi Badenoch to Tommy Robinson.
I mean, this is really, it's ridiculous, to be very honest, because how I see it, it's a smear campaign against those people who are criticizing something that is disturbing and that it should be worrisome for all of us as a society. What happened in London during this event, it was a mass Islamic ritual that was conducted with thousands of people, participating. Women were pushed in the back rows. I mean, what kind of inclusive and diverse event it was. And when we are talking about intimidation and dominance, yes, there have been historical instances when Muslim forces, armies, they did offer prayer on battlefields or in areas they conquered, but it was a proclamation of war and victory, not a sign of assimilation. So I think Nick Timothy is absolutely right to criticize this mass, Islamic ritual organized in London by Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London.
And Keir Starmer, who, I tell you what, wins the award now for weakest, most dangerous, appalling world leader in more than a generation. Not only does he not listen to his people with their very legitimate concerns, he says this.
Shadow Justice Secretary is defending British values when he says Muslims praying together in Trafalgar Square are not welcome. Mr. Speaker, even Tommy Robinson, I can hardly believe I'm saying this, has said today that if the Shadow Justice Secretary had made these hateful comments 2 years ago, the Conservative Party would have kicked him out. Now, Tommy Robinson isn't some sort of moral signpost. He was pointing out how much their party has changed. They're more inclined to his views, and he's right about that. The fact that he's sitting on her front bench shows she's too weak and has got absolutely no judgment.
Now, I would say to the UK Prime Minister, maybe learn a little lesson from what's happening here in Australia. And we're not anywhere near as far gone as you are. But our PM was essentially chased out of Lakemba Mosque. People screaming abuse at him, calling him all sorts of names. And like you, he has done almost everything possible to appease Muslims in Australia. There is a list a mile long of things he has done to try and appease this community post-October 7. And guess what? They still hate him. They still scream abuse at him. He is still not comfortable in that environment. It doesn't work. It doesn't matter what you do. Islamic extremists don't care. And history will show that on every single occasion. It doesn't matter what you do. It will never be enough. So maybe try this on for size. As the Argentinian president says, most people will hate you when you leave politics, so you know what? You might as well do what is right when you are there. Because trying to appease both sides never, ever, ever works. They both end up hating you. But there's a group that I would rather be hated by more. Every day of the week. It's a badge of honour when those who support terror despise me. I say, well, tick, I must be doing something right.
Ramadan is incomprehensible.
Get him out of here!
We as Australian Muslims.
Get him out of here! He's out of here!
Respect the place you're in, please.
1 billion! Don't say nothing to you. He's a big sell out. Shame on you. It's the element of the problem.
Oh, look, I've seen some of those reports and they're just simply not accurate. There were 30,000 people plus at Lakemba this morning, overwhelmingly. The reception was incredibly positive. I walked through the crowd to the mosque and not a single person heckled.
Seriously. And then afterwards, our Prime Minister saying, no, most people were really happy to have me there. No, I wasn't. Come on. That doesn't help. People have eyes, they have ears, they saw it, it's on tape. Even more appeasement off the back of being treated appallingly. It doesn't work. Weakness doesn't work. Appeasement doesn't work. Burying your head in the sand does not work. Never does. Now, you can look at people who are extreme on all different sides. When those who are common sense, reasonable, well-versed, start to say things like this, get worried. Colonel Richard Kemp, watch.
Government now, or no prospective government of the UK, has the guts to stop it. If they want to take strong action to prevent the Islamification of the UK, then it's going to mean big trouble for them. They don't want trouble. They look 4 years ahead. They will kick the can down the road to somebody else. And I think the end result of that is very likely to be civil war in Britain, where the indigenous...
Physical civil war.
Actual civil... I'm not talking about the American Civil War, uniformed armies. I'm talking about something more like Northern Ireland, but on a much more intensive scale, where you have the indigenous British and the some of the immigrant population and the British government all on three different sides fighting against each other.
Now, I've got a guest coming on over the next day or two, a bishop in the UK, Bishop Dewar, who penned an open letter to the King, sent it to him directly, but also published it. Millions of responses, engagement. The masses have gotten behind it. He says the same thing, and I'll bring that to you. It is chilling. But I tell you what, I have hope. I have hope that the vast majority of good, decent people in the United Kingdom, including Muslims who don't want this hijacking of who they are and what they stand for, will stand up and fight back. It's got to happen because no one else will do it for you. But I have faith. I'm seeing enough of the waking up now to have faith. But you can't let too much more time go by or else, hello, look at Iran. And that's not being silly either. There are so many similarities in exactly the way that that country was stolen. And the people who helped it be stolen, the socialists, the lefties, well, they were the first to be killed when it was. Learn a lesson. Now, the people of North Korea have clearly learnt many lessons, and that is never to go against their leader, because in wonderful, surprising, absolutely unheard of news, the party of leader Kim Jong-un has been re-elected. 99.93% of the vote too. Now listen, this is how it works over there. This is how it works. Voters were given one name, one single candidate, and they were asked to either approve or reject them. Voter turnout was 99.9%. Apart from that 0.07%, they all hit approve. And the party itself put out a statement saying that this result essentially reflects, and I quote, the ardent desire and self-confidence to reliably defend their glorious state political system. Have a look at this. Have a look at this, and you tell me if this is self-confidence or they are being forced or will be killed.
보고를 경청한 대표자들의 신심충출한 열의 속에 대비는 자기의 역사적인 사업을 계속했습니다.
I mean, you see these idiotic Democrat douchebags at their No Kings rallies. Come on. If you want to fight real dictatorship, go to North Korea. Go over there and no kings. In fact, you can do the goat thing. You can sing. You can dress up as animals, whatever the hell you like. But go do it somewhere where there are actually consequences for it. Go do it somewhere where there's actually a dictator. Actually a king. Yeah, didn't think so. I got a message from someone saying they love the show, thank you so much, but saying that I should do more to push back on Candace. And I wanted to explain to you why I don't invest that much time in Candace. Yes, I take on a fair bit of what Megyn Kelly says, Tucker Carlson too, to an extent. But Candace, she's just not really a genuine threat. She's kind of like a human own goal. Like there's a level of stupidity that just doesn't require a refute in the nicest possible way. I only take on people that I'm worried might have an impact, that their lies or their propaganda might start to shift the dial a little bit. Candace is just so many parts cray-cray that I feel like most people, even a lot of people who watch her, know that she's bat beep crazy, but just enjoy the show, the car crash type thing. So I don't actually need to debunk anything or come out and say, what you said wasn't true, because it's so stupid and I just don't have time. I mean, I could find time. You can find time for things, but it's just unrequired. So that's my reason for not doing a whole heap of stuff on Candace. Now, let's get into, well, in fact, we're talking about her in this episode, but there's a reason, a legitimate reason. It's actually not so much about her. It's about someone else who's got a little bit of a spotlight at the moment. His name is Joe Kent. Charlie Kirk's rabbi, wow, he reveals something right now that he's never said publicly before. Plus a whole heap of other stuff that will, again, like his last appearance on this show, blow your mind. Enjoy. We'll get into all of that, but first, here's a word from our partner. Now, if you are like me and you're tired of random stuff getting thrown into your supplements like artificial colours and sugars, you probably would like to know more about phytonutrition. Yes, I had to Google too. Let me save you by telling you. Phytonutrients are the naturally occurring plant nutrients found in whole foods that give them their colour, their taste and their smell. And the presence of these three things is a surefire sign you're getting real phytonutrients. Now, Balance of Nature's whole health system supplements are a value bundle that includes their fruits and veggies, fibre and spice supplements, which gives you 47 ingredients of fruits, vegetables, spices and fibres, and all of the naturally occurring phytonutrients that come with them every single day. Tick. Balance of Nature takes produce through a specialised vacuum, cold process, and it stabilises the ingredients. Now, they're then powdered and packaged with no binders, fillers or flow agents. So whether you've been on the fence for a long time or it's the first time you're hearing about them, I recommend that you go to balanceofnature.com and order the whole health system supplements as a preferred customer today. Go to balanceofnature.com. Okay. Rabbi, thank you so much for joining me here on the Erin Molan Show. Thank you for coming back. The first episode, I mean, my fans are generally kind, but they were beyond blown away by how good you are. So very, very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's talk about Joe Kent to start with. Big headlines regarding his resignation and, of course, the circuit of clowns that he has partaken in since.
So let me tell you something about Joe Kent that probably no one listening here knows, okay? So if anyone's been following the plot about Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens and the famous text messages where Charlie was having a day where he was very upset at his Jewish donor who pulled out, and that famous screenshot that Candace made so much of. So here's something, I'm kind of revealing this for the first time, Erin. You know that I was in that chat group, right? We talked about that last time. The members of that chat group have known for quite some time that the way that those screenshots got to Candace is via Joe Kent. You see, this has never been made public before, Erin. Right now on your show, this is I'm saying this. So let me explain. Andrew Colvett, who's, was Charlie's number 2 guy who now hosts the show. Andrew was in the chat group as well. He was one of the 9 people in the group. And he admitted at first, to be perfectly honest, at first he was denying it. We didn't know how Candace got them. But then he admitted on the air on his show that he had given these text messages. And when I say text messages, screenshots, there were 2 screenshots that he gave. One was that famous screenshot of that text exchange. And the other was a screenshot with the names of everyone in that chat group. Okay? And he gave them he said that on the show that he gave them to someone in the government. He told us that he gave them to someone in the government, and his rationale for it, which I think is foolish, although I'm not going to go too hard against Andrew here. I like Andrew as a person. We're friendly. And with Charlie just having been killed, I'm sure there was a lot going on. And I know that he regrets doing this. But his rationale was he didn't want to leave any stone unturned. And he was asked about this by someone in the government, and that he gave those screenshots to someone in the government. And of course, the response of the people in the chat group was, you don't have a right to do that. This is a private chat group. There was no warrant. It doesn't work that way. But nevertheless, he did it. And the next thing we know, Candace Owens is talking about it. Now, Candace has said publicly that she had been in touch with Andrew after Charlie's assassination and that they had been talking. But we knew that even if Andrew might, maybe in some alternate, if Andrew had messed up and given her the text message with her name in it where Charlie was saying he might invite her back to AmFest because he was upset at this Jewish donor, that could be possible that he would do that, although unlikely because TPUSA had broken with Candace, and Andrew knows who Candace is and what she might do with that, so it was doubtful. But what really made us feel that Andrew was not the one to give her the text messages was that second screenshot. There's no way, even if he had shared that first screenshot, that he would have revealed to Candace Owens the names of all 9 people in the group. It made no sense. So we didn't know how it got to her. And then we started putting pieces together. Because Joe Kent was someone that we knew that there was a relationship there between Charlie and Andrew and Joe. We knew that when Charlie would visit Washington, D.C., he would talk to Joe. And we kind of put 2 and 2 together, and eventually, I'll leave out some of the details that I shouldn't say. We kind of verified that the messages had been given by Andrew to Joe Kent, and that Joe Kent had been the one to pass them on to Candace. And I was thinking about this when I saw that interview that Tucker did with, so Tucker did this interview with Joe, and Joe was talking about the Charlie Kirk assassination. And you have to remember that Candace kept saying that she has information from the top levels, that there's questions to be asked. Okay, this is all Joe Kent.
Not saying
no, I don't think you are.
Because of this happened. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying there's unanswered questions. We know the pressure because of the text messages that have been made public, that Charlie was under a lot of pressure from a lot of pro-Israel donors. And again, we know Charlie was advocating to President Trump against this war with Iran.
Because he's the head of counter. Now you have to think of it from Candace's perspective. This is someone who's the head of the counterterrorism center, and he's saying that there's something there. Yeah. Right? And he gave her the text messages. So when he was being interviewed by Tucker, and he said to Tucker, well, we all know about the text messages which were made public. That was his exact words, which were made public. And I'm watching this, and of course, the millions of people who watch this aren't seeing it the way I'm seeing it. I'm looking at going, excuse me, which were made public? You made them public. So you talk about leaking. Now, in other words, let me back up and say it this way. Even if you say that there's reason to investigate this, there's no justification for sending those text messages to Candace Owens. None whatsoever. Anyway, that's my little reveal for you.
No, I mean, thank you, first of all, for sharing. And the second part to that, though, Rabbi, is I watched him with Megyn Kelly, and she asked him in 3 different kind of ways that felt as though it had been rehearsed prior, if I'm being honest. And his response of no to her questions about had he been leaking, I mean, it looked like, I'm not going to use an analogy that's inappropriate, but, he looked nervous and completely unsure of what he was saying, and the no was so weak. There was nothing in it that felt like he was, I mean, if someone was accusing me of that, I'd be pushing back hard, but he was kind of, no. I just feel like, how can he say that, though, if he has done it? Because he's said definitively no to leaking. Will he now look at it when it comes out and say, oh, well, leaking is, defined as this, and what I did wasn't, or they weren't confidential. He'll somehow try to get out of it. But the way he handled Megyn Kelly, I thought he looked wormish.
I think he's a mediocre person. I mean, but he also got into a bad crowd. Much has been made online in the last couple of days about how his tweets from a few years ago were in a completely different direction on Iran, and of course his second wife, who he recently married, has written for Gray Zone, worked for Max Blumenthal, who's a notorious Israel hater, America hater, Russia and Iran shill, and that's who he's married to. So there's a lot of questions there. And it also raises, I'll tell you something else, and this is just conjecture. We all know that Charlie famously wrote that letter to Prime Minister Netanyahu, where he talked about his support for Israel. And we know that for years and years, he was such a staunch supporter of Israel. And then there was this whole question of where he was in the final months and whether he was wavering on Israel or turning on Israel. Well, we always noticed that every time he would go to Washington, D.C. and spend some time there, he'd go there for a day, have some meetings. He'd always come back kind of more cynical about Israel, more suspicious about Israel. And now, in retrospect, I think back and I wonder to myself, Charlie was a young guy, brilliant guy, young guy. And here he's got this friend who's the head of the counterterrorism department. He's in the intel community. He's in the office of national intelligence. And I wonder if all along it was Joe Kent who was poisoning Charlie on Israel. That's just my conjecture, because of who he is and the group and who he runs with. It's also interesting, when you think back when Tucker was on Fox, Joe Kent ran for office a few times unsuccessfully. Yeah, that's pretty much his career. He was a war hero for sure, and his wife was killed. And then he had a number of unsuccessful runs for Congress, and kind of became a bit of a talking head on some MAGA shows. And but mainly on Tucker. He was a regular on Tucker Carlson's show. And so was Candace Owens. And so was Glenn Greenwald. And all these people and they never talked about Israel. Tucker Carlson never talked about Israel on his show on Fox. But when you think back to the people who were in that crowd, I wonder if they have a WhatsApp chat group.
Like a cult. Well, exactly, like a cult almost, that it's slowly and he just chips away. The interesting part is you talk about Charlie and how intelligent he was, and he was one of the most phenomenal human beings to ever live. But you also made the point last time we spoke, and Candace maybe not so much included in terms of intelligence and depth, but Megyn Kelly, clearly smart. Tucker Carlson, clearly very smart. And maybe it is just the financial factor that motivates them. But if it's not, if they've also been able to be kind of tricked or coerced or indoctrinated, then anyone's vulnerable, really, aren't they?
Yeah, it's interesting. It makes me think about some of what made Charlie such an admirable person. Charlie was suspicious of everybody. But not in a conspiratorial way, but meaning he took everything. He was always measuring everything, and he wanted to hear from different voices. This is how I ended up as part of his life, right? He wanted to, he heard from those voices. He wanted to make sure he had someone on the ground in Israel that he could talk to, and he was always seeking people who knew more than him. He had a number of people in his life who were older than him, who were mentors on different topics and different areas of his life that he was constantly consulting with. There was a certain humility in that. He didn't think he had it all figured out. Yeah. And that's part of what made him who he was. But yeah, listen, people are vulnerable, especially when you end up at a young age having access. When you have access, you feel like you're getting inside information. Like when Candace says, I have information all the way from the top in the intelligence community, she's actually telling the truth. Because if the head of counterintelligence is telling her that this ridiculous conspiracy theory has validity, she feels very much justified in saying that it does.
Yeah. And emboldened, doesn't she? And in some ways, the role that he's played in so much pain and suffering is significant. No. And does he get held to account? We'll wait and see. I guess in a moral way or a religious way, we all do eventually, don't we, get held to account. Speaking of Christian Zionism, Rabbi, you're fired up. Can you explain this to me? I'm a good Catholic girl, but probably not as good a Catholic girl as I should be.
This goes right into the Joe Kent conversation because, Joe and Candace and this, what's her name?
Mari Jean, the beauty queen.
Yeah, exactly. The Catholic who was harassing. She was harassing Shabbos Kestenbaum at that hearing. That's how she made her fame. So she got her 7 minutes. So there's something interesting that's happened in our political discourse about Israel over the last really maybe half a year mainly, which is that the whole issue of Christian Zionism and the theological attack on it coming from a lot of Catholics, but not only Catholics, coming from Christians who view Christian Zionism as a kind of heresy and are kind of doubling down. And part of this, what makes it really dark, is part of the messaging, and you hear it from Tucker a lot and from Candace a lot, is that the Jews of today aren't the real Jews. You've heard this before, I'm sure. Right? You hear this, and I find it actually a fascinating claim. I actually find it very interesting because, and what makes it so interesting, here's what makes it really interesting, is that it's brand new. Let me explain what I mean. If you go back to, let's say, Martin Luther, who lived in the 16th century, okay? Hated Jews, despised them. He wrote a whole book called On the Jews and Their Lies, okay? Despised Jews. But he never claimed that the Jews of his time were not the real Jews. He absolutely acknowledged that they were. There are lots of Jew haters throughout history, a lot of Jew haters in the name of Jesus throughout history. But they didn't claim that the Jews of their time period weren't the real Jews.
Such a good point.
It's a brand new claim. Now, let me explain why they're doing it. So I thought about this because I encountered this. I'll tell you a quick story. I was once invited to speak, before October 7th, and I got involved in a lot of more political messaging and advocating on behalf of Israel. My career is really Jewish-Christian relations, a lot of it in the academic space, speaking in churches and Christian seminaries. I have relationships with Christian theologians and leaders. And I was once invited to speak at a Presbyterian church in the state of Wyoming. And that's very unusual because the Presbyterian Church of the United States of America, the PCUSA, is very anti-Israel. They support BDS. They're very, very anti-Israel. But there was this one Presbyterian pastor, a woman out in Wyoming, and she wanted to have me speak at her church, to hear our side. And she asked permission from the state presbyter of Wyoming to have this event. And he didn't want to say yes, but he also didn't want to say no to a pastor of one of his churches and then have a disgruntled pastor. So he reluctantly allowed her to host me. And he sent her an email allowing her to host me and also saying that it had to be recorded. The recording had to be sent to him. There was all these stipulations. But the opening line of his email to her was, he said, "I want to make my position clear. I do not equate the Jewish people of today with the biblical nation of Israel." That was his opening line. Wow. And she showed me the email. I don't think he thought she'd show me the email. And she showed me the email, and I thought to myself, that's so interesting. Like, this is really a brand new thing. And then I looked into it, and I realized it's a claim that's only surfaced in the last few decades. So why? So it's very simple, actually. The classic Christian doctrine of the Jews is what's called supersessionism or replacement theology. And that was the dominant view of all Christians from Augustine's time until today. For most of that time, Christians believed that the church had replaced Israel, that the Jewish people had lost their covenant, right? And everyone knows that. Yeah. But it really became a popular doctrine because Augustine, who's probably the most influential Christian theologian, maybe of all time, arguably one of the most, he embraced this, but he explained it as follows. He said that the Jewish people are like Cain, who killed his brother and was then a wanderer for the rest of his life. So too the Jewish people, for killing Jesus, are destined, and he also based it on a verse in Psalms. There's a whole passage in his book, The City of God, where he explains this, that the Jews are destined to be scattered and powerless in exile forever as a witness, to bear witness to the consequences of rejecting Jesus. Okay? And that became the dominant theology of the Catholic Church, and that's the way most Christians believed. And even in the Protestant circles where they embraced other forms of supersessionism, it was all kind of built on this construct that Augustine had formulated. What's the problem? The problem is that when you make an assertion like that, an eschatological assertion that the Jewish people will be in exile forever, And meanwhile, the Jews at the time are saying, well, yeah, we've been in exile for a while, but we believe that we're going to go back one day. Someone's going to be right and someone's going to be wrong. It's not like one person believes in the Trinity and one person doesn't, and you never have to, it never comes to a head. You just have different beliefs. If you're making an assertion about history, let's see what happens. So what happens when the Jewish people, who have an unbroken chain of who we are, it's a totally unbroken chain. We have communal records and books written by Jewish leaders from every single century, almost every generation, going all the way back to temple times. We know exactly who we are and where we've been. The assertion that the Jews of today aren't the real Jews is not held by any legitimate historian because it's completely ahistorical nonsense. It's easy to refute. And that's also what makes this so interesting. That here's the problem that these people are faced with. History progresses, and lo and behold, the Jewish people are ingathered to the land of Israel after thousands of years in exile. We come back to our land from the four corners of the earth, and as the Bible says, even if you are scattered to the ends of the heavens, from there the Lord your God will gather you and bring you back to the land of your forefathers, and you will take possession of it and become more numerous and more prosperous than your ancestors. That's Deuteronomy 30. That's the ingathering of the Jewish people. It's then repeated dozens of times. It's the most repeated prophecy in the Bible, okay? And no other nation from the ancient world that went into exile ever came back home. And many, many nations were exiled by invading empires. So the only one that God said it would happen, that nation comes back to the land of Israel. So now, if you believe in Augustine's doctrine, you have a problem. Because if Augustine was alive today, with a prosperous nation of Israel in our homeland, ingathered from the four corners of the earth, he wouldn't have said what he said. So you have a problem if you're a Catholic. If you're a Catholic who believes that, if you're a supersessionist, you say, wait a second, what do I do? If I acknowledge that the Jewish people today are the same people from the times of the Bible, then I have to face the fact that the biblical prophecy of their return has happened. So what do? I either have to adjust my theology, which is what Christian Zionists did. Christian Zionists basically say, oh, wait a second. Replacement theology that says that the Jews are never coming back turns out to be wrong. So they've made a change. So all these traditional Catholics look at the Christian Zionists and say, hey, that's a brand new idea. And therefore they try to delegitimize it. But what they're actually doing is they're saying, hey, wait, we have to adjust. And these traditional Catholics, they can't accept the fact that the Jewish people have returned to their land. So their only way out, their only workaround, is to say that the Jews aren't actually the Jews.
That's incredible. And you're right, because I can't deny the return to the homeland. That's happened.
Right. So they have to say that we're not actually the Jews. Right.
Yeah. That is, gosh, you're incredible. I'm going to challenge you again, and it doesn't feel like it's a challenge for you at all. But the MAGA fracture, the MAGA coalition, can you tell me what is going on and what impact do you think it actually has in the real world, particularly with midterms coming up and the future of MAGA and the Republican Party?
Oh, it's very serious. Listen, the MAGA coalition was never one movement. It was always a coalition of different groups. And these different groups, even within the MAGA movement, always have existed, and even in their own ecosystems within the movement. Let me explain what I mean. The people who listen to, let's say, the Daily Wire, and the people who watch Real America's Voice, and the people who and the evangelical Christians watching TBN and CBN, and the people watching Fox, these are not the same audiences. And the RFK health libertarians, who are also part of the MAGA coalition. These are different ideologies, these are different groups, and they don't really overlap. They all only overlapped around one person, who they all identified with and who appeared on all those platforms, and that was Charlie Kirk, which is why there's such a huge... Outsiders sometimes wonder, why is everyone fighting over what this 32-year-old would have thought? The reason is that everyone had this basic awareness that he was the only person unifying the movement. Everyone else is part of a certain faction. Think about it. Every other big name in MAGA, they're clearly in a particular camp within MAGA. Whether it's Steve Bannon or Matt Walsh or, I don't know, some of the people, or Glenn Beck, they're all in a certain camp. The only person who could credibly go on the Christian networks and go on this, the same network as Steve Bannon and go on, and Fox, and everyone felt that he was one of them, was Charlie. And it was very intentional. The fracturing of the movement started happening over the Iran war in the summer, and it's continued now. This issue has really highlighted a key breaking point in the movement over involvement in wars overseas, over where money gets spent, over Israel, and I fear that it's going to cause tremendous damage in the midterms. We'll have to see how much President Trump leans into the campaigning, because he can unify the movement, I think. But I think we're at a very problematic place, and it could very well be that the MAGA movement is really fracturing into different factions, and could end up, there could be another realignment within it. Going back to what we talked about last time I was on your show, and this connects to it, I think that Tucker Carlson, with the Joe Kent interview, which I don't think was a good look, and also this other recent interview he did with the Chinese Communist Party operative, I think it's confirming what I said to you, I believe, that he continues to shave off more and more parts of his audience, and hopefully there will be a kind of coalescing around a sane worldview that could hold the movement together. But I fear that the MAGA movement, which again, it was never really one movement. It was a coalition of groups that all agreed that we have to get rid of the Democrats and get Trump in, but they never really agreed ideologically on what it means to make America great, and what that greatness really is. So that's how I see the lay of the land.
It's fascinating. Just on the Iran war issue alone, when you look at some of the polls that are coming out, and Fox had a few of them on over the past, say, 24 hours or so, and what they tend to show is that there is almost an increased support amongst those who refer to themselves as MAGA voters and MAGA supporters for this war in Iran, despite these very high-profile former MAGA, absolutists, essentially, who are being very vocally against and arguing the exact opposite point. So does that give you faith in that maybe these high-profile ones that are basically looking for money, clicks, and are motivated by self-interest don't necessarily bring the grassroots of MAGA along with them when they fracture? Is that also a possibility that should comfort?
Yeah, and like I indicated that the last time we spoke, that online world is not real world. I think a lot of the people who've been taken in by the Tucker, Candace, Meghan group skew much younger, who have a low voter turnout anyway. Generally, I'm not sure how much effect it'll have, but we've also seen some recalibrating from some people. For example, Steve Bannon, who I've had a long time relationship with. I still go on his show frequently, and sometimes, and I mix it up. He still has a lot of anti-Israel people on also, and it's an important place, it's an important platform for me to be on. I was on his show earlier today, actually, and we were arguing, we were disagreeing a bit. But whereas in June, his approach to the 12-day war was very against American intervention, and he was lashing out at Israel, and it almost sounded like what we're hearing from some of the isolationists now, where it almost seems like they're rooting against America because they were so opposed to it. He's not. He's kind of recalibrated and is basically saying, look, I didn't like this, but once we're in it, we need to win. And we need to trust Trump. Like I said last time I was with you, that was Charlie's approach to the war in June, which was, I don't like this, but we have to trust Trump. I really believe that if that's the approach that these people would take, it would hold the coalition together. So there are some hopeful signs, but I'm not going to be Pollyannish and say, oh, everything's going to be fine. I think the midterms could be a big problem.
Yeah, I suspect they might be messy. I think you're absolutely right. I want to end today, Rabbi, and thank you so much for giving me some extra time on the personal aspect of this war. I did a piece yesterday that's gone pretty viral. Mark Levin shared it and a few others. And of course, the hate is profound, but it doesn't bother me in the slightest. But essentially making the point that what you're doing in Israel on behalf of us all is unbelievable. The sacrifice that the people of Israel are willing to make, not just for their children, not just for the people of Iran, but for the rest of the West and the entire world to be rid of this evil terrorist regime is extraordinary. And yet we still try to demonize Israel. And my point was, we should be saying to you, to your wife, to your family, to your children who are fighting, thank you. Thank you for going through hell. Thank you for being willing to die, because the bombs from the Islamic regime are not reaching America or the UK or Europe or Australia. They can, which we've now learnt. A lot of people already suspected. We now know they can, but they're not right now. It's you who are paying with your lives so that we can have a chance at a life without these terrorist scumbags. So the personal element of it, I'd love if we could end on that.
Sure, and thank you for that sentiment. It means a lot. And I know, I personally know many people in Israel who take great comfort in your words and your support. So on behalf of them, I want to thank you. But just on a personal note, I have multiple children who've been on the front lines since October 7th in heavy combat situations, including what's going on in Lebanon now. So I say this, and I also have friends who've lost kids and lost family members on the battlefield. But at the same time, the happiness index that is published every year came out again, and Israel once again was in the top 10. Israel usually is in the top 5, but I guess there's a war going on, so we're only like number 8. And if you look at all the other countries up there, they're like Scandinavian countries that have never had an enemy, Ever. And you have to wonder, why is it that Israel is one of the happiest places on earth, even as we're fighting? And I think it has to do with the fact that when you have, and I'm not wishing war on anyone, but everyone serving in the military and fighting side by side and making those sacrifices together, there is a sense of social cohesion here, of everyone in a shared experience, in a very intense, high-stakes shared experience with the weight of Jewish history on our shoulders and an awareness that we are on the cusp of a great era of history when we achieve victory. But the fact that we're all going through it together, there is a bond that people in Israel feel with each other that is, I don't even know if you could have it without fighting together. So while it's difficult and it tests us, and there's a lot of stresses, and there's a lot, and the problems are real, the PTSD and the broken families and all that is real. But at the same time, on a societal level, on a national level, there's great strength and joy and closeness and intimacy that everyone in the country feels with each other because of the war. So that's my personal reflection, and I really feel, you can feel multiple things at once.
Yeah. I can, in a very small way, and whilst I haven't done it long term, I was there during the 12-day war, and the couple of families, I was there on my own. I'd gone for one night to get an honorary doctorate from Reichman University, which was an incredible honour. And the next day was on the way to the airport when the war broke out. So I was there for 12 days, and the two families, I was a pain in the butt because I attached myself to them, and they've now become, I visit them twice a year, families for life, because the bond that you go through. And when I left, I felt not even guilt, but this enormous disappointment that I was leaving, given the enormity of what was being done. It's so hard to explain. It's something I could never have understood had I not been there. But to do it long term is another kettle of fish. And the second thing I'll say is I did my first Shabbat in Israel maybe a year ago now, and I will always remember coming from an Australian family where we love each other as much as you love your family, I have no doubt, but it was different. The way people interacted, the way mums stood there and put their arms around their teenage daughters, the way that a 16-year-old boy hugged his 7-year-old brother was different to what we would do in Australia. And I was looking at it thinking, two of them were going off back to the IDF afterwards, were going back off to service, and I thought, it's a different kettle of fish when you are a mum thinking your daughter might get killed in battle tomorrow or might go back to Gaza, or when you're 17 about to go and join and you've got a 7-year-old brother who in my country we would find a massive pain in the butt and you wouldn't be endearing to. You'd love each other, but it's different. There's a different kind of intimacy, love, and a visual showing of affection, as well as the banter and everything else, that comes from a group of people who know that life is precious, who know that tomorrow they may lose someone they love. And we don't have that in Australia. It's not the same because it's not our experience. but it stayed with me, and it was just, it stayed with me for a long time.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah,
Thank
it's really
you. That's
beautiful.
Really moving. It's really moving. I'm grateful
and
to
I
have
mean
heard you
it very
say that.
much. Rabbi, thank you so much, and sending so much love to your family and your beautiful children. Please thank them for their service on behalf of all of us with half a brain and a whole heart, because we understand what they're doing, and we thank them.
Thank you. God bless you, Erin.
He's brilliant, isn't he? Oh, my goodness. I could listen to him talk for hours and hours. So thank you so much for watching. It is time for some fan feedback. And the video we showed you at the start, or if you missed it, make sure you check it out. It was essentially my message to the world saying, maybe say thank you to Israel for being willing to die on behalf of us all, to fight an enemy of us all that will benefit all of us. And wow, did that fire up the haters, my Lord. So I wanted to bring some of that to you, mainly from X, of course. I mean, it's more picture form. So if you are listening to us on the podcast, I mean, you shed tears over things that deeply hurt. Someone putting a dumb bitch juice in my hand and having me drink from it in an AI-generated picture is not one of those moments that really had an impact. It's just, I want people to be clever if they're going to take me on. Be funny, be clever, be obliterate me. But again, putting like a popper, like a little thing of juice in my hand with the words dumb bitch juice and having me drink it, it's none of the above. It's so stupid. But I mean, points for trying, bless you. Aston Bill says, you are a brainless whore. Critical Thinker says, boom, boom, Tel Aviv. I mean, Paul Simon says, this is Zionist BS propaganda. And just on something, by the way, a few people say the same thing. I don't remember her saying beep about Palestinian lives, recap and so, bitches. Or where were you when they killed Palestine? Look back at anything I've done post-October 7, particularly that year and a half after. And I think I would have spoken more about the suffering of children in Gaza than almost anyone else who stood with Israel. Almost to the point where people were saying, hey, hold back a little bit. Sorry, watch my stuff. I covered it in the most comprehensive way. But you know why you don't care? Because I identified who was actually responsible for their suffering. And it wasn't Israel. It was Hamas. It was the terrorists who make their lives a living hell, who cause every second of pain and suffering, who are responsible for every death in Gaza. I spoke about it daily. But because I refused to buy into your bullshit and blame Israel, you say, oh, where were you when all the I was right there. I was just actually too able to identify their enemy. Unlike you. Oh, here we go. You couldn't make this shit up. She must love Zio Beep so much. I mean, beautiful. Oh, here we go. Did you report on the kids dying under rubble in Gaza? Again, yes, I did. Multiple times. Over and over. In fact, I shed tears over their suffering. Thank you so much. But again, I didn't blame Israel for it, because I have a brain. Oh, Edgar Borey. Everyone looking at this piece of trash. She's a failed TV sports host and have moved into the podcast space because no one can stand the sight of her. Well, actually, no, I was a TV host, a very successful one, a sports TV host for 15 years. And I got poached by a news network from Channel 9 who had offered me a new contract and wanted me to stay. So, sorry, no, I wasn't a failed sports host. I could still be there. But you know what? 11 p.m. on a Friday night talking about some bloke's groin injury, just the novelty wore off for me. Some people are suited to that. Some people love that. Some people, that's their thing. And I was so blessed to have that experience. But for me, this is my space. This is what I love. This is what I care about. So no, I wasn't failed. I was poached. Don't know why that poached. I was stolen. Knobs. Oh, and by the way, I've failed a million times. If you don't fail multiple times a day, you are not trying big enough things. I will continue to fail over and over for the rest of my life. Do you know why? Because I am brave enough to try. And I back myself even when it feels like it's just impossible, I'll still try. And you know what happens? Maybe 1 in 10 times, I'll pull it off. And I might fail 9 times prior. But for that 1 in 10 times, I'll pull it off. And you know what? All of you people who are afraid to try anything, you might not fail as much as I do, but you'll never reach any great height. And that's fine. Each to their own. But I would much rather try my ass off for everything that I want and to create a world that I think is the best possible one for my child. And I will fail along the way, but the times that I succeed will mean more than anyone else who's just going along like this and never puts themselves out there. So proud to have failed multiple times. I mean, there's so many to go through. Blah, 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 blah. You know what? That's it. I'm done. There's enough whore, insults there. I mean, there's it's over 500,000 views now on X, and the haters have been sharing it and just launching in. But luckily for me, and not so luckily for them, don't care. Just gives me good content for my fan feedback. Love you all. Thank you. Make sure you join us this week. We have so much coming up for you. Bishop Dewar, an open letter to the King of England saying, stop this crap, save our nation. Plus, we've got Benham from the FDD on the latest out of Iran. When the war is won. Love you all, and we'll see you soon. Bye.